Winter is coming. You've heard that phrase a million times by now, right? Maybe you've even imagined yourself brooding on top of the walls of Winterfell while the snow gently falls on your shoulders. Sounds great, doesn't it? Well, guess what? You wouldn't make it. And I'm not talking about fighting White Walkers. Nah, odds are you'd be one of the countless peasants out there just praying not to starve to death. But good luck planning your grocery list not knowing if it's gonna snow for a month or, 7 years. Alright, so how long do these infamous winters actually last? Let's crack open the Westeros weather channel. Winter here can last a few months if you're lucky or drag on for 6 years or more. It's the kind of winter where you start wondering if your fancy furs will save you when it's minus whatever the fuck degrees outside. But for this video, we're zeroing in on the most recent harsh winter. Tyrion Lannister was born in 273 AC, right smack in the middle of a 3-year-long winter. Why? Because it gives us the clearest picture of population, army sizes, and most importantly, how much food would be needed for survival. But hold up. You're probably asking, how far does this never-ending winter even reach? In the north, you're most likely a popsicle. In King's Landing, you get the occasional snowstorm. It's just cold enough to make you question all your life choices. The Riverlands, snow piles up like nobody's business, and good luck farming on anything once that starts. The Reach, they get cold winters that mess with crop growth. Old Town, barely a dusting, more like a mild inconvenience than a death sentence. And Dorne, they're probably laughing at everyone else freezing to death. So for our video, we're staying in the Riverlands. Why? Because fuck you, that's why. The Riverlands are right in the middle of the continent, which means they get the worst of both worlds. Harsh winters, but without the rugged northern grit or the southern sunshine, if you know what I mean. Now let's talk survival. We need to run some numbers to figure out how much food we'd need to keep everyone alive. First up, population. Based on the armies during the War of the Five Kings, we can estimate the Riverlands had about 45,000 soldiers. If we use typical medieval population to army ratio, where the army represents about 2% of the total population, that gives us around 2.25 million people living in the Riverlands. Now I know this number would probably be less, because the War of the Five Kings is after a long 10-year summer, so the population probably boomed, but work with me here. Now realistically, they likely would have implemented rationing to survive 3 years of winter. So let's say everyone needs at least 2,000 calories a day. So if you thought surviving on ramen in college was hard, try doing it with salted fish and old bread for 3 years. So let's break it down. If each person needs 2,000 calories a day, that's 2.19 million calories per person over the course of the winter. Now multiply that by the estimated population of the Riverlands and you're looking at a staggering 4.93 trillion calories. To put that in perspective, that's like shoveling 8.96 billion Big Macs down your gullet. Let's break down exactly how much food you'd need to keep yourself alive through this endless winter. In medieval times, calories came from 3 basic things: grains, meats, and vegetables. Here's how it works. Grains is your breads, your oats, barley, good solid carbs. They make up about 50% of the calories people eat. That's 1.9 million calories from grain per person over 3 years. Meats, whether it's salted pork, dried fish, or whatever meat people can get their hands on, meat is the protein source. That's about 25% of the calories, or 547,000 calories per person. Vegetables are also 25% of the calories. They come from your greens. Well, not so green after a year of pickling and drying, but hey, it's better than nothing. That's another 547,000 calories per person. So here's what that looks like in actual weight of food. Each person needs about 330 kilograms of grains over the 3 years, about 206 kilograms of meat, and a whopping 1,204 kilograms of vegetables. Now scale that up for the population of the Riverlands and the numbers get ridiculous. That's roughly 742 million kilograms of grain, 462 million kilograms of meat, and over 2.7 billion kilograms of vegetables to last 3 years. And an extra fun bit of information, to produce this sheer amount of produce, based on medieval agricultural yields, the approximate land needed would be over 7 million acres minimum, though it would likely be far more, especially if you account crop rotations, fallow periods and losses from spoilage and pests. So, let's say you've managed to produce all that food up to the last second before winter starts. Congrats! You've got a fighting chance, right? Well, here's the problem. How long would that food actually last? Based on medieval standards, grains can last up to 3 years if you store them properly. That means dry, cool conditions, which good luck with that during a Westerosi winter where everything is either frozen or damp. Still, grains are your best bet for lasting the whole winter. But then we get to vegetables. Root vegetables like carrots, onions and turnips can be stored in root cellars for a while. And if you're lucky enough to have pickling down to an art, you might stretch them for a year, maybe 2. But by year 3, let's just say those pickled carrots are looking real questionable. Now meats, salted, dried or smoked, might last a year, maybe a bit more if you're careful, but again, after the first year, your protein sources are pretty much wiped out. And remember, we're talking best case scenario here. No spoilage, no rats sneaking into your granary, no rival lords raiding your food stores. Realistically, things would be much worse. Alright, let's look at what happens when you run out of food. In the first 2 years, you've managed to starve off disaster, but malnutrition still claims 5 to 10% of the population. That's anywhere from 112 to 225,000 people in the Riverlands alone. They die from weakened immune systems and plain old exposure to the harsh cold. Then comes year 3. That's when things really start to fall apart. By this point, you're running on nothing but grain because veggies are rotting and the meat's long gone. Now you're losing 15 to 20% of the population from severe malnutrition and starvation. That's another 285 to 405,000 people. And just when you thought things couldn't get worse, famine sets in hard. The body starts piling up as another 30% of the remaining population dies from sheer starvation. That's another 315 to 472,000 people. By the time winter ends, about half the population of the Riverlands could be dead, meaning 1.1 million people are gone. You might think that you've made it through the worst, but guess what? You didn't die of starvation, now you get to die of dysentery. Nature's way of replacing your family sigil with a big frozen middle finger. When people are malnourished and weak, their immune systems are wrecked. Historically, after a famine, 20 to 30% of the survivors can still die from famine-related diseases. So out of the 1.1 million who made it through the winter, 220,000 to 330,000 more could die from disease, which brings the total death toll to between 1.3 and 1.4 million people. That's around 60% of the population wiped out. Survival odds for peasants are less than 50% during a 3-year winter. By the time the snow finally melts, you'd likely have eaten all the grain, any stale bread and maybe even that sigil above your door. So how do you survive a Westerosi winter? That's easy. Don't be born in Westeros. That's your best bet. Because when winter comes, the only way you're going is in the dirt. So next time you hear someone say winter is coming, just remember, unless you're sitting on a mountain of food, you're basically done for. For all you hardcore viewers who stuck around, here's a little extra nugget of doom. Fire. Fires need wood, and wood does not grow on ice. In medieval times, an average household in colder climates like Northern Europe burned about 10 to 12 cubic meters of wood every year. And since we're assuming an average household size of 5 people, the Riverlands' 2.25 million people would mean around 450,000 households. Now over 3 years winter, you'd need 13.5 million cubic meters of wood. That's a whole lot of trees. And just how many trees is that, you ask? On average, a mature tree gives you about 1 to 1.5 cubic meters of usable firewood. So you need to cut down somewhere between 9 and 13.5 million trees, basically turning the riverlands into a desolate wasteland just to keep warm. The bright side is, at least you will have a lot of time to replant the trees in a summer that lasts longer than your last relationship.
Nice.